Good morning. We're just waiting for member Chandler to arrive, and there she is. Good morning and welcome to this online hearing of the Committee of Adjustment of the City of Ottawa under the Planning Act. This video conference is also live streaming on YouTube. With me are my fellow panel members, Jocelyn Chandler, Stephen Lewis, Terrence Otto, and Martin Vervoort. My name is Fabian Poulin, and I will be chairing this meeting today. The procedure for this hearing will be as follows. Listed on the agenda and appearing on the screen are applications we will hear today. For the sake of efficiency, the committee may deal with agenda items in a different order. Committee members have reviewed the planning reports and any written submissions in support or in opposition of each of the applications. Today, we'll hear oral submissions from any interested parties. Notice regarding minor variance applications, notwithstanding pre-consultation with city staff, is the responsibility of the applicant to identify and all required variances accurately on the application. 2, 1, add a new variance or to increase the extent of a variance requested. Must be given in accordance with the Planning Act and may require the application to be recirculated for the next hearing date at a cost to the applicant at the prescribed fee. If an applicant amends their plans with no impact to the variances or to reduce the variance requested, recirculation may not be required. As part of the statutory notification requirements, each applicant was required to post a sign on the property and file a statutory declaration confirming the sign posting. This declaration must be on file today before we can hear the application. Without it, I may have to adjourn the application or administer an oath if necessary. Can the coordinator confirm that statutory declarations have been received for all applications?
Mr. Chair, we have not received any statutory declarations.
I will then administer the oath to all applicants. The committee may ask for a brief presentation of the application, followed by questions from members and submissions from the public. Please address your comments to the chair, starting with your name and spelling it if necessary, and your municipal address for the record. The committee limits presentations to 5 minutes. Any exceptions will be at the chair's discretion. Before we begin, we have 2 items to address. Does any member present need to declare an interest in any of the applications that are before us today or that are on the agenda of another committee panel? Ms. Chandler?
Both on panel 3, repeating the declaration of interest for item number 9, that's B00266 and 267, and on item number 7, B00253 and 255.
Thank you very much. We also have minutes to adopt the last public hearing. We have minutes to adopt on the meeting of August the 4th. Do we have approval or adoption of those minutes? Panel members, please raise your hands if you would like to adopt those minutes. August 4th minutes are adopted. August 18 minutes, do we have approval for adoption of those minutes? Members, all in favor? August 18 minutes are adopted. So we have one bit of other business that wasn't on the agenda, which is the change of condition request by 2881 Blanchfield. So that will be added to our agenda today as well. So now I'd like to ask for applications. We'll first deal with items that are going to be adjourned. Is there anyone interested in adjourning their application today? I believe we have 3 adjournment requests. First one is for item number 1, 1770 Old Second Line Road. And is Mr. Jordan Jackson available? Mr. Jackson, believe I saw you earlier. There you are.
Sorry, it's Miss Jackson.
I
Sorry,
apologize.
yeah, no problem. There was a glitch there when I was added in, so I'm afraid I might have missed what you just said. Sorry, Chair.
Oh, no, it's fine. I'd like you to, if you were requesting an adjournment, or I believe MVCA is requesting the adjournment.
Yes,
do
that's
you-
right. So sorry.
Do you agree with that adjournment request?
We've spoken with our client about the nature of the Conservation Authority's request for an adjournment. And at this time, we are not in agreement and would prefer that the applications proceed as we've presented. If you need any reasons for that, I'm sure I could touch upon that.
Sure. What we'll do is we'll ask the MVCA for their comments, and then I'll come back to you if that's okay.
Sure.
I'd like to ask our conservation partners, Ms. Ogden, are you available to address this request?
Yes, I am. Thank you. The Conservation Authority has requested an adjournment in order to allow for a modification to the lot boundaries between the proposed lots 2 and 3, as they currently intersect with the floodplain mapping for Harwood Creek. We would be comfortable proceeding with application B00225 today, which is related to the creation of, I believe, Lot 1, it was referred to as.
Thank you. Now I'd like to ask our member from the Planning Department. I believe that would be Mr. Gordon. Do you have any comments to make about this adjournment request, Mr. Gordon?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, the Planning Department doesn't have concerns with this application at this time, but we would also respect the Conservation Authority's concerns.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Jordan, do you want to give us a little bit more detail on why you'd like to proceed today?
Sure. So when we look at the context of the applications that we've filed with the committee, the CIA's request is that the lot boundaries be revised. So when we look at the context, the proposed lots are fairly large in size and have relatively large increased lot depths relative to where the floodplain is identified on the property, which is nearly half a kilometer away from the proposed lot frontage. This provides sufficient lands to accommodate development in a safe manner on the proposed lots. Each of the lots can be provided with safe access. And then another comment was that there is an unevaluated wetland towards the rear of the property. And we're able to demonstrate in the presentation today that that unevaluated wetland feature is in fact entirely contained on one of the proposed severed lots. Since staff expressed that they didn't have any concerns with the applications and the Conservation Authority indicated no concerns with the lot layout for the first application, we're prepared to proceed with all 3 as we feel the committee would benefit from hearing all the applications today.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Jordan. I'd like to ask the panel if they've got any questions or comments. Ms. Chandler?
No, I'm okay to proceed with the application.
Thank you. Mr. Vervoort?
No, I'm ready to move ahead. Ultimately, I think it's the applicant's decision if they want to proceed.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis?
Proceed.
Mr. Otto?
Proceed.
I'd like to ask the panel to hear this application today and not adjourn it. Please raise your hands if you agree. All in favor? We'll hear your applications today. Thank you, Ms. Jordan.
Thanks.
Now we'll move on to adjournment request number 2, having to do with application number 2 and 557 Jenkinson Road. Ms. DeSante, are you available? No, I see someone different.
Good morning. So Nadia
morning.
DeSanti, my colleague who originally was carrying this file, is at a OLT hearing, so I'm here on her behalf.
Okay, great. And do you agree with this request for adjournment, Ms.?
So
Carlos?
I do not, I apologize. I do not agree with the city's request for adjournment, the reason for, but I will request an adjournment. Reason being that the statutory notice, the sign that was posted on the property on August 31st, is no longer there. And so it was not up for the required time. So as a result, I'll be reposting that notice. And I request that the adjournment, that this file be heard at the next available meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to go right to the panel and ask them for adjournment till October the 6th, so the sign posting can be made. All in favor, please raise your hands. We'll adjourn till October the 6th. Thank you very much, Ms. Barbos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
That will move on to item number 8, having to do with 4926 Stonecrest. Ms. Zander, are you available?
Good
Good morning,
morning.
Ms. Zander.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. With regard to the adjournment request, this application was filed quite a few months ago, and the environmental impact study, which was the main reason for the adjournment, was filed several months ago. We just got comments on Friday. They were very minor from city staff and conservation authority staff. We did provide a revised environmental impact study back to staff on Monday. And while I appreciate they haven't had a lot of time to review that, the comments were quite minor. And there is a recommended condition in the staff report that speaks to the EIS anyway. So I think that staff have sufficient information, and we have provided a response. And given this has already been adjourned, my client and I would like to see this move forward to the committee for discussion today.
Okay, thank you very much. Now I'd like to ask Mr. Gordon for your comments with respect to the adjournment request.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. We would maintain our request for adjournment. It should be noted that the first submission did not include an EIS. So this is the first review of an EIS, and we don't consider the issues to be that minor in nature. So we would maintain our request for an adjournment.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Revort, any comments?
Apologies there. Just for Mr. Gordon, I guess, how long would an adjournment be required if we were to consider that?
Through the chair, I don't believe it would need to be very long now that the revised report has been submitted. I believe it would be able to be reviewed for the next hearing.
And I just had a question for Ms. Zander. Are you prepared to go ahead and leave it sort of open to the department to impose conditions regarding any deficiencies in the EIS, or would you prefer to have that discussion and have this heard at the next hearing?
Well, as I said, we reviewed the comments and the report has been updated and resubmitted, and there is a recommended condition. So I think if the committee moves forward and makes the decision, the condition is there that will allow for that back and forth we need with city staff and conservation authority staff to hopefully bring this to a resolution. So I'm reluctant to see it get adjourned again, given the condition is there. I think we are going to be required to resolve this with your staff anyway, whether we wait 2 weeks or you make your decision, the condition is still there.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Lewis?
It's up to the applicant. If they want to hear it, I'm okay hearing it.
Thank you. Mr. Otto?
Hearing it as well.
All right, Ms. Chandler?
I don't have any concerns with hearing it.
Thank you. All in favor of not adjourning and hearing this application today, please raise your hands. We will hear your application in order. Thank you very much, Ms. Sander. I believe that ends the adjournment requests. Just for all the applicants that are listening in today, we're going to be doing something a little different in that we'll be hearing change of condition first regarding 2881 Blanchfield. Then we'll move to those items in line with the agenda. However, items number 7 having to do with 3125 Torwood and item number 9 having to do with 6150 Thunder will be heard at the end, since Ms. Chandler will be leaving us due to a conflict. Now, that being said, I'd like to ask, excuse me, agent for 2881 Blanchfield, Mr. Ryan Keon, to briefly describe his request for change in condition.
Okay, I just want to make sure, am I visible and audible?
You're not visible, you are audible.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let me see if I can get my face on there for you. Okay,
There you are.
there. Yeah. So at the time of the hearing in June 2nd, I guess I should have pointed out at that time that my client already had an agreement of purchase and sale, which was just fortuitous. But anyway, we are in a position to satisfy every condition except for the completion of a rezoning application. There is no desire on my client's part to do any new residential development on the retained lands. They just want to complete the agreement of purchase and sale that they have, and of course, if you deny this request, we'll have to ask the purchaser again if they're willing to extend the agreement of purchase and sale again. But it would be a long extension, and I'm not sure that we can get that. As far as the possibility of trying to do a residential development on the retained land goes, I don't think we can anyway, because we did quite deliberately merge these lands. When these lands were acquired in January, they merged with the lands abutting with frontage on Stagecoach, and so they're now merged into a property that is a commercial office yard with a working yard in the mineral extraction zone. So I think if we wanted to do any residential development, we'd have to come back to the city and try to do a subdivision or a severance or something anyway, which we won't do. And besides all that, if there is any way for us to agree to do the rezoning application of the retained portion of the land that we acquired, or that my client acquired back in January, we will do the rezoning afterwards. We're not concerned about rezoning that portion of the property. We're not concerned about the cost of rezoning that portion of the property. We're just trying to get in a position to close on an agreement of purchase and sale that has been in place since April 22nd.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gordon, can you give us some comments on behalf of the city?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I will be addressing this application.
Okay.
The planning department entirely objects to this change of condition request. And the primary reason is that under the official plan, this property was not eligible for a residential severance by no means. And the applicant understood this and agreed to this, and they agreed to this condition at the June 2nd hearing date. So essentially they are not allowed residential severance. The fact that they do have a purchase agreement that is about to expire does not supersede the requirements of the official plan. The official plan is very clear that a residential development is not permitted on the retained land, and the purchase agreement does not supersede that. We requested the change of condition to ensure that no residential, the rezoning condition to ensure that no residential development would be placed on the retained land. to Mr. Keon's previous comment, if the yard closes down at any point, they are allowed as of right to build a residential development on the retained land without changing anything whatsoever. Furthermore, because it was understood that the retained land would be rezoned to prohibit any future residential development, the staff concluded that they did not require a number of technical reports. If that condition to rezone the property is removed, effectively allowing residential development to take place on the retained land, the staff must request additional conditions and additional reports on top of that. Namely, we must request an environmental impact statement because there are significant woodlands and unevaluated wetlands on the retained land. There is a mineral aggregate resource nearby, and this new lot would be within 300 meters of that sand and gravel pit. So under the provincial policy statement, we would need a mineral resource impact assessment. And we would also need a hydrogeological condition to demonstrate that the water is safe and can support residential development. In conclusion, the plan department cannot support this. This is in direct conflict of the official plan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harden. Sorry. I'd like to now ask the panel for their comments. Well, first of all, Mr. Keon, do you agree with if this your request is granted? Do you agree with being able to provide those 4 different conditions?
I mean, if we get into having to provide those technical reports, we'll be unable to complete the agreement of purchase and sale for a different reason. We'll still be unable to complete the agreement of purchase and sale. I appreciate what Mr. Harrigan's saying about if we were trying to pull a fast one, maybe we could, but I just want to point out in the May 28th planning report that we got before the June 2nd hearing, staff wrote that as the proposed severance is to separate the existing residential dwelling from the existing commercial structure, staff are satisfied that the general intent of the official plan and zoning bylaw are maintained. And now I understand that I don't even like the word removing the condition because my client really is quite prepared to rezone that portion of the land they retain after the severance. So I really view it more as a modification than a removal. I understand technically it's removing because the severance will be completed. But if there's a way to do an agreement or something, post a little bit of financial security, we can do that. But these are 2 existing uses. Like we aren't, and we did deliberately, it was deliberate that we allowed the 2 parcels to merge so that we would be severing a residential dwelling off a 20 hectare parcel instead of a 9.8 hectare parcel. And just to make clear that all my client was doing when they bought this property was trying to acquire land that abuts their industrial commercial operation, just because that's the sensible thing to do. And severing off the existing bungalow, again, just seems like the sensible thing to do. I'll leave it to you now. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Keon. Mr. Revord, any questions or comments?
I guess my concern is that if we were to not impose the condition, which I believe is required and was agreed to by the applicant at the time, I'm not sure how we would ever enforce that or ensure that it was done after the severance was completed. So I'm struggling with the request. I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis, any questions or comments?
Well, we have processes we have to kind of follow, and this just seems to be a long way from the process that we can enforce and do. I don't think I'm in support of changing the rezoning request.
Thank you. Mr. Otto, any questions or comments?
Yeah, I have difficulty accepting the reasonings for changing this. I think it was put in place for a good, valid reason. And I guess my question would be, could the sale not be, wording in the sale not be changed so that it could accommodate this rezoning at a later date and leave the condition as stands.
Can it be extended, Mr. Keon? Your agreement of purchase and sale.
As soon as I get off this video conference, I'm gonna call the purchaser's lawyer and see if it can be extended, because that's the only choice I have. Maybe would it be possible maybe if we could adjourn this to your next meeting, and I would come back, I would let you know if I have an extension, and it would also give me a little more time maybe to talk to Mr. Harrigan about finding some way to accommodate the purchaser. I appreciate the comments. I understand the comments. I'm just trying to find a solution for my client.
Right. Okay. I'll get back to Mr. Harrigan in just a minute, but Ms. Chandler, any comments?
I don't have anything to add at this time.
Okay. Mr. Harrigan, any comments about Mr. Keon's request to have this adjourned?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, we would not be in agreement with an adjournment. There is no foreseeable way to have this rezone condition completed after a severance is certified. It is just completely unenforceable. And having this condition removed is in direct conflict of the official plan. We cannot support this under any agreement, and it's furthermore a dangerous precedent to start stating that a purchase agreement can supersede the requirements of the official plan.
Okay, thank you very much. We have to determine whether this is a minor or major change. So to that end, I'd like to ask the panel if they believe it is a major change. All those that believe it's a major change, please raise your hands. Thank you. To that end, I'd also like to ask the panel if they would like to agree to this change in condition. I personally don't believe it's warranted. It flies in the face of the official plan, and I would not support this. All those in favor of declining the request for the change in condition, please raise your hands. So, Mr. Ryan, regretfully, your request has been denied. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your time.
Okay. I'd like to move on to application number 1, having to do with 1770 Old Second Line Road. And I'm looking for Ms. Jordan Jackson. Ms. Jackson, are you available? Good morning again.
Good morning. Yes, I am.
I need to administer the oath concerning the sign posting on your property. Are you available to take that oath?
Yes, I am.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time? Do you swear?
I swear.
Thank you very much. Please proceed with providing us with a brief description of your application today.
Certainly. I believe I had submitted some presentation slides to the committee. Awesome. Thanks. So thank you, Chair. So my name is Jordan Jackson. I'm a planner with Novatech. And our address is 240 Michael Copeland Drive, Ottawa, K2M1P6. I don't see the presentation materials. Regardless, I'll just keep going. So on behalf of the owners, we had filed an application at 1770 Old Second Line Road, 3 applications with the purposes of creating 2 new lots within the city's rural area. This property is located just north of March Road and has approximately 22.86 hectares in size and nearly 328 meters of frontage. This property is presently developed with a single detached dwelling on private services and several accessory structures. Surrounding land uses include rural residential subdivisions, as well as rural residential and agricultural properties. So the next slide, please, if you don't mind. So the nature of our applications was to create 2 new land parcels. So the first application proposes to sever the existing dwelling and accessory structures from the remaining property to create a 3.09 hectare parcel with approximately 108 meters of frontage on Old Second Line Road. If we go to the next slide, the second application proposes to create a middle lot that's currently undeveloped of approximately 9.74 hectares and 110 meters of frontage. And then that third application we had filed is a reciprocal consent. We can see that on the next slide, which is to sever the retained lands, which propose to create a parcel of approximately 10.03 hectares and also with 110 meters of frontage. This property is located within the city's general rural area, which permits the creation of 2 lots. As the subject lands are an existing lot of record, each of the severed and retained lands meet the minimum lot area and frontage requirements of the city's rural zone, and therefore maintains policies in the city's official plan. So we have reviewed the staff report and agency comments. I'd like to just touch upon the comments that were raised by the Conservation Authority. Their comments had made a request for an adjournment, which was to revise the proposed lot boundaries for that middle lot and then the severed third parcel to the south. We were not in agreement with that adjournment request. And then I'll express just some reasoning for this if we go to the next slide. One of their comments was that we ensure the floodplain and unevaluated wetlands are entirely contained on one of the parcels. When you consider the context of the applications that we've filed, we're of the opinion that the proposed lot boundaries are considered appropriate for the proposed use on these lands. You'll see from the sketch that that overlays the mapping provided by the Conservation Authority that the floodplain is sited towards the rear of the property, which is nearly half a kilometer away from Old Second Line Road. This provides a substantial amount of land outside that floodplain to accommodate building envelope outside the floodplain for each of the properties. That's nearly 75 to 80% of the lots still available. We're of the opinion that when you consider policies that they suggest that you can't fragment floodplain, but rather the intent of the policies with regards to lot creation within natural hazards is to ensure that development can occur in a safe manner to protect people and property. So when we look at the lots that we're creating, there's safe access that can be provided along Old Second Line Road, and development is more likely to occur there. If we go to the next slide, we can also demonstrate that the unevaluated land feature on the property is entirely contained on the retained parcel that's 10.03 hectares in size, and that any development near this unevaluated wetland feature would be constrained by existing constraints such as the floodplain and any zoning bylaw setback requirements. We'd also like to note that it's not uncommon for lots to be created where there is a portion of the property within the floodplain. Other examples can include waterfront lots, so long as we're demonstrating that on the properties we can accommodate development in a safe manner. With regards to the city's comments that were provided, we understand that the conditions recommended are standard of rural consents for rural residential properties. So we have no concerns from that perspective. For the reasons described, we're of the opinion that the proposed applications to create these 2 lots for residential use within the rural area are considered appropriate for the orderly development of the lands. So this would conclude my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions of the committee.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gordon. May I now have Mr. Gordon to present the city's position on these applications? Mr. Gordon?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, as outlined in the staff report, the planning department has no concerns with the applications subject to the conditions contained within the report.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. I would like to ask the conservation partners for their comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As noted, there is a regulatory floodplain on the subject property from Hardwood Creek, which was mapping completed by the Conservation Authority in 2009 and approved by our Board of Directors. In accordance with the official plan policies, that floodplain mapping completed by the Conservation Authority will be carried forward into the next update of the zoning bylaw to be included in the floodplain overlay. The Conservation Authority's concerns are related to the proposed application for Lot 2 and Lot 3, which is the middle and southern lots, as the proposed lot boundaries extend within the regulatory floodplain of Hardwood Creek. The City of Ottawa official plan states that development, which includes lot creation, is prohibited within the regulatory floodplain. And in this case, the Conservation Authority wouldn't support the lots as currently proposed. Our request for adjournment was to provide the applicant an opportunity to revise the lot boundaries between proposed lots 2 and 3 in order to maintain the new created lots outside of the floodplain. The Conservation Authority has no concerns with the proposed Lot 1 as it is located entirely outside of the floodplain on the property. And it is our opinion that the proposed lots can be revised and still support development while maintaining a new lot creation outside of the floodplain. It's the intent of the policies to limit risk to property, and by creating additional landowners within the floodplain, it increases that potential risk to property. While there is sufficient development envelope outside of the floodplain on all proposed lots, it is still our recommendation that the lot fabric not extend within the floodplain.
Thank you, Ms. Ogden. Ms. Chandler, any comments?
Well, I definitely have concerns when I see proposed lot creation fragmenting natural features. As noted by the applicant, floodplains do get fragmented through lot development frequently, especially on waterfront properties. And I don't see a difference here given the size of the lot. The intent of the provincial policy statement is met. Well, I don't think the official plan for the City of Ottawa actually defines development as lot creation. I think the official plan defines development as actual construction of structures. But that said, as far as the PPS goes, I think this application meets the intent, and I'm not concerned with floodplain on the rear of large lots.
Thank you, Ms. Chandler. Mr. Otto, any questions or comments?
I guess my only question would be that this proposed, the floodplain, this property is basically on two sides, has got lots all around it. How do those lots to, I would say, I guess the north side of this diagram, how did they get approved? I really think there's lots of room for development if someone was to build at the other end. So I really don't have any concerns.
Thank you very much, Mr. Otto. Mr. Lewis.
Yeah, I support the application, whether the committee wants to put something on title that no building within the floodplain, or that's probably will be caught anyway at the building stage.
Thank you. Mr. Revort, any questions or comments? You're muted, sir.
I'm just unclear from the conservation partners' comments as to where they would propose to put the lot line. I'm not sure exactly how much difference that's going to make, or what's proposed. Maybe Ms. Ogden could just tell us where she thinks the lot line could be, because that was not totally clear to me.
For you, Mr. Chair, we'd be recommending that lot 3 have a similar lot depth as the proposed lot 1, so that lot 2 could maintain the majority of the rear area, including all of the floodplain.
Okay, thank you. I agree with the comments that have been provided by the applicant and the other committee members. I think in this particular circumstance, there's lots of room for development. It's not a concern given the size of the lots. And I know in the past we have created lots that do bisect existing floodplains. I think we just did 3 of them in North Gore not very long ago as well, and that didn't seem to be a big concern there. So I don't, in this particular case, I'm not sure that there's any reason to object to the proposed severances.
Thank you, Mr. Vervoort. Now I'd like to ask the panel for approval of these 3 applications. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Your applications are approved, Ms. Jackson. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Now, item number 2 has been adjourned. Moving on to application number 3. Having to do with 4030 Ramseyville Road and 4218 Leitrim Road. Is Jamie Posen available? Jamie Posen, are you available?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chair. Thanks. Just took a second to join.
Not a worry. Are you able to take the signposting oath this morning?
Yes, I am.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time? Do you swear?
Yes, I do.
Great. Please proceed with a brief summary of your application. Thanks.
Yes, happy to do so. Now, I was expecting to be joined by my colleague, Scott Alain. I see him here on the screen. And so I'll actually, with your indulgence, Mr. Chair, I'll just turn it over to Scott for the presentation, but I am here for any questions.
Thank you very much. Please proceed.
Thank you. So hi, as mentioned, I'm Scott Allen, planner at FO10. We've been retained by the owner with regard to the consent you see before you to create a new lot from the property known municipally as 4030 Ramseyville Road. You can see it on the screen before you. We've reviewed the comments and the report provided by staff and external agencies and appreciate the support for the application. We note the one public comment submitted with concern about the severed land being developed as a plan of subdivision and would like to note that this type of development is not permitted by the present policy and regulatory framework, nor is it the intent of the owner to develop it as such. We also note that we have reviewed the conditions provided by the Committee of Adjustment and have no concerns. To give you a bit of background, the subject lands comprise a 16.2 hectare property located at the corner of Ramseyville Road and Leitrim Road. As you can see, the lands are irregular in shape. They're accessed by a semicircular private driveway connected to both Leitrim and Ramseyville Road. The lands have historically been used for agriculture purposes and accommodated a detached dwelling on wastewater servicing and water servicing from the Carlsbad trickle feed system. Various accessory farm structures are also present on the property. An aging barn, which I'll show you a close-up of shortly, is located on the site and is proposed for demolition in the near future. The area surrounding the lands is generally characterized by rural agriculture and undeveloped lands with sparse residential and commercial development. The area north of the subject lands, importantly, is a part of Ottawa's Greenbelt, which is, of course, a permanently protected area of green space, farmland, and natural systems. Coordinator, if I could please get slide 2. Great, thanks. So the application proposes to subdivide the land into 2 parcels. A severed parcel is proposed to be 0.87 hectares. That's the red one, of course, and includes the existing dwelling. The retained parcel of 15.34 hectares will remain undeveloped, excepting any accessory farm structures to be retained. No new construction is proposed as part of the severance, either on the severed or retained lands. And it is noted that a granted consent would require a formal reference plan prepared by a licensed surveyor to confirm all boundaries, etc. If I could get the next slide just quickly, please. Thank you. So this is just, it shows, if you look directly west of the rear lot line, the proposed rear lot line, you will see the accessory barn proposed for demolition. And also you can see on the screen, we have identified where the septic system is and the estimated setbacks relative to the house and the the retained lot. Next slide, please.
Sorry,
please
if
go
I
ahead.
can break in, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Now that I've seen this application start to develop, I think I need to withdraw myself from this, sitting on this application.
Okay, so
Okay. So
Madam
if the
Coordinator.
coordinator can remove me.
That's great. Okay, please proceed, Mr. Allen.
Mr. Chair. This is Schedule A of the official plan, the rural policy plan. And just quickly, this land is identified as general rural area, which are intended to provide a limited amount of residential development by Severance and other rural uses, including things like agriculture and uses best accommodated outside the urban boundary. Policy 4 of the general rural area notes that residential uses on existing lots of record and on new lots created by Severance are provided for by this plan. Policy 10 provides some requirements of the official plan for severing land in the rural area. So I'm just going to go quickly through them, just in terms of rationalizing this application. If you want me to go back to any specific one, let me know. So firstly, a maximum of 2 lots can be created from any lot in existence May 2003. We are proposing the creation of 1 lot and have enclosed a parcel abstract showing that no other lots have been created from this lot. The next one is the retained land has to have a minimum area of 10 hectares, which we meet. The severed lot has to have a minimum area of 0.8 hectares, which we meet. The proposed lot cannot have access to provincial highways, which we meet. The proposed lot should not front on an arterial road. It will front on a collector road. The creation of a new lot must conform to minimum distance separation. There was a comment on this in the report, and the former livestock operation in that barn will be formally resolved through the demolition of the barn, and it's not actively used. But next one is not impact land designated on the bedrock or sand and gravel resource area, which is there's none in proximity. And lastly, that has to do with servicing and the removal of mature vegetation. No new development is proposed at this time. Just quickly wrapping up here, if I could get the next slide, please. Just as a note, the lands are within just the edge of the airport vicinity development zone. So the owner is made aware that any future development would require adherence to the policies by both provincial and federal agencies and the municipality with regard to this zone, but as noted, no new development is proposed. And lastly, if you can skip the next one and go to the last slide, please. Just a brief note on zoning. It's zoned rural countryside, and this zoning permits country residential lots as being proposed and lots for agriculture, which is the intent of the retained land. And lastly, I'm pleased to go through the Planning Act tests for consent, but some of them are reiterated in the official plan. So it's up to the committee whether they would like to hear that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Allen. Mr. Harrigan, can you make some comments on behalf of the city, please?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, the planning department has no concerns with this application, subject to the conditions contained within the planning report.
Thank you very much. And may I ask the Conservation Authority partners if they have any comments?
If I may, through the chair, there's no objections from the RBCA. The Ottawa Septic System Office did provide some comments. While the proposed lot line seemed to be acceptable for the location of the current septic as provided by the applicants, it was highlighted that the existing septic system might not meet building code for the setback to the building itself, but that would be dealt through through a relocation, and there is sufficient land on the proposed severed lot to accommodate a new septic system if required. It's more just flagging it for the applicant's information, but there was ultimately no objections from the Ottawa Septic System Office.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lalonde. Mr. Otto, I'd like to ask for your comments, please.
No comments, just refresh my memory if you could on, is there a condition of removal of that old barn?
Well, there is condition number 3, the existing barn conforms to zoning bylaw, or it also is going to be relocated and removed. I believe that the applicant has said it's going to be removed.
Thank you. Then I have no more concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis?
I support the application as it is.
Thank you very much. Mr. Vervoort?
I'm in support of the application. I just had a question for the applicant. So when you show the sketch of or if you do the overhead view, it looks like on Leitrim Road there's a property there, and they've got a bunch of cars or something that actually encroach on the land. Does that have any effect on the application, or?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this was identified in the staff report, and this was advised, and we agree with staff in this regard that it's something that the owner of the lands will have to resolve with that property owner. It was noted in the report that it is an illegal use for the RU zoning, so they will have to deal with this, but it has, in my view, no bearing on on what is being proposed through this consent.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't have any comments to make. I'd like to ask the panel for their approval of this application. All those in favor, please raise your hands. The application is approved. Thank you very much, Mr. LA and Mr. Posen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Take care.
Thank you. Just trying to get some technical stuff. There we go. All right, so now I'd like to move on to application number 4. And application number 4 has to do with 255 Thomas A. Dolan Parkway. Kiana Simmons, are you available? And Madam Coordinator, there you go, Ms. Chandler's back. Great. Good morning, Ms. Simmons.
Good morning.
I need to administer an oath concerning the sign posting on the property. Are you available to take that oath today?
I am, yes.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time? Do you swear?
I do.
Please proceed and provide a brief summary of your application.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Kiana Simmons, and I'm here on behalf of Novatech. I'm joined by my colleague, Steve Pence. Our address is 240 Michael Copeland Drive, Suite 200, K2M1P6. And we are representing the owner of the land municipally known as 255 Thomas Dolan Parkway. You can see here, I guess the lot is at the intersection of Thomas Dolan and Torwood Drive. The owner wants to create 2 new lots from their property at 255 Thomas Dolan Parkway for a total of 3 lots for residential use. The subject site is undeveloped, irregularly shaped parcel with 39.3 hectares in the city's rural area. Next slide, please. Can we skip to the next slide? Oh, thanks. The first severance application proposes to create a new land parcel on the eastern portion of the property, 12.2 hectares with a frontage of 192 meters along Thomas Dolan Parkway and a depth of approximately 625 meters. Next slide, please. The second severance application proposes to create a new land parcel in the center of the property of approximately 14.8 hectares with a frontage of 205 meters along Thomas Dolan Parkway and a depth of approximately 623 meters. And next slide, please. So these two severance applications will result in a total of 2 new lots and 1 retained parcel, having an area of approximately 12.3 hectares with a frontage of 226 meters along Thomas Dolan and 30 meters of frontage along Torwood Drive. The third severance is being filed in relation to the retained lands as a reciprocal severance. After the conveying of the land, both the severed parcels and the lands being retained will meet the minimum lot area and lot width requirements of the rural countryside zone. And next slide, please. Okay, this is supposed to be the EIS slide, so we might be missing one, but I will speak to it anyways. A natural environment assessment of the proposed building envelopes was prepared by Lancaster Environmental Planning Incorporated. The findings of the report determined that to avoid impacts on forest and mapped wetlands in the north portion of the site, all building envelopes should be located within cultivated fields in the south portion of the site. I actually might get you to go back one slide just so we can see on the drawing where those cultivated fields are. You can see sort of that brown area at the front is where we're referring to the cultivated fields. And at the rear of the site, you can see that's where the forested lands are. The building envelopes will be located a minimum of 30 meters from the on-site and adjacent channels and far enough from adjacent trees in the west and east edges of the site to protect the critical root zone of the adjacent trees. The proposed development envelopes range from 2.1 to 3.1 hectares, which ensure the majority of the land will remain naturalized, and that these applications will not increase density in the area or diminish the rural character of the neighborhood. And we did receive letters from neighbors with concern about subdivision development, and we just want to reiterate that that is not permitted in this area of the city, and it is not what the applicant is proposing or intends for these parcels. A geotechnical report was also prepared to address city staff comments about potential for karst on the subject site. The report confirmed that no karst was present. However, there were comments in the staff report added to address further karst potential in the staff report. And we have discussed it with city staff and feel comfortable accepting these as conditions in severance. We have reviewed all the other comments from external agencies and city staff and have no concerns with the conditions recommended. This concludes my presentation, and my colleague Steve or I are happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Simmons. Mr. Gordon, I'd like to ask you to comment on behalf of the city, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. As noted in the staff report, we have minor concerns, and those are to do with that karst topography. But we are satisfied that it can be resolved as a condition, so we would be agreeable to this application as it includes a condition to do some further verification of the potential karst topography.
Okay. I'd like to ask Mr. Gordon, are we losing any agricultural land with this proposed application? Didn't seem to be any comment with respect to any loss of agricultural land in your.
Yeah, it's designated general rural area, I believe. So it those comments usually pertain to agricultural resource area. So this is a permitted use.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Otto, I'd like to ask the panel now. Mr. Otto, would you like to make a comment?
No comments, thank you.
Mr. Lewis.
No comments.
Ms. Chandler.
I don't have anything to add, thank you.
Mr. Vervoort.
I'm fine with the proposed applications. I just note there are some comments from neighbors regarding water quality, etc. But I think those will be addressed through the hydrogeological report.
Agreed. Thank you. I'd like to ask the panel for approval of this application. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Your application is approved. Thank you very much, Ms. Simmons.
Thank you.
I'd like to move on to applications 5 and 6. having to do with 6920 Mansfield Road and 6925 Leaks Road. Mr. Paul Jansen, are you available, sir? I see a Mike Garvin. Are you replacing Mr. Jansen? You're muted, sir. There we go.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Thanks for your time, everybody.
Are you replacing Mr. Jansen, or are you going to be representing yourself as the owner?
I'll be representing myself. Yeah, Jansen was our lawyer.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. I need to administer an oath concerning the sign posting on your property. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time? Do you swear?
Yes.
Please proceed and provide us with a brief summary of your application today.
So we're looking to get 2 lots severed off the back of a farm, which so the lots will front onto Bleaks Road. The picture that's up there is has to do with the variance that we were applying for. There is, as you can see, a horse barn on the other side of the road. And as per the setback, we were supposed to be 120 meters, but the lot line is only 50. So we will develop the house, we'll put the house 70 meters from the road. And then my brother is also applying for a lot right beside us. He's a little bit farther down the road. So for his variance, it's the condition would be that it would be 50 meters from the road.
Okay.
One other thing to note is that we're looking to create the two lots that are 1.046 hectares each, which will still leave quite a bit of the significant woodland that we submitted a EIS for. And yeah, that's, if you have any questions for me, let me know.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to ask Mr. Harrigan to comment on behalf of the city.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, the planning department has minor concerns with this application, primarily the minor variance application. Under the current guidelines for the minimum distance separation, the MDS guidelines, for any lot over 1 hectare in size, the MDS is calculated from the edge of the barn to the edge of a 0.5 development envelope. Now, because of the environmental impact statement, the applicant was required to locate the development envelope abutting the front lot line. However, they have demonstrated that the residential dwellings will be located 70 meters and 50 meters respectively to ensure that both residential dwellings will adhere to the MDS requirement. The planning department's minor concern is that the houses being located at the back of the development envelope forces the majority of the private amenity space to be located in the front yard and within the MDS setback requirement. And as such, the planning department does express minor concerns with that. We will note, though, that the minor variance itself is being rather conservative, and the actual MDS setback is approximately 56 meters and 76 meters. And then the applicant is proposing to keep 10 meters of wooded buffer at the front lot line. So essentially, this does mean that the closest amenity space will be approximately 66 meters and 86 meters respectively. Just to kind of state that for the record. So in conclusion, we do have minor concerns with the minor variance.
Mr. Harrigan, do your conditions help to resolve your concerns?
Partially. The one condition requiring a development agreement to locate the houses 70 meters and 50 meters respectively, that does ensure that the residential aspect will be adhered to. However, there is no condition that we can request to deal with the private amenity space that would keep in lines with the environmental impact statement.
Thank you. Mr. Garvin, are you aware of the 7 conditions that would likely be imposed if this application is approved?
Yes, I'm aware of them. I've reviewed them.
And do you agree with them?
Yes, yes.
Great, thank you very much. I'd like to ask our conservation partners, see if they've got any comments with respect to this application.
If I may, through the chair, the RVCA has no objections, as well as the OSSO has no concerns or objections to the consent applications. It was noted that the retained parcel is subject to the floodplain from Flowing Creek, but these lots are nowhere near that feature. The only other comment that I have is I made a bit of a typographical error on the comments, and it should refer to under item 6 that there's no objections to the minor variance applications. I put consent applications twice. So from our end, we have no issues.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask the panel for their comments. Ms. Chandler?
I don't have anything to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Otto?
No, nothing further to add. Thank you.
Mr. Lewis?
No problem with the consents or the minor variance.
Thank you very much. Mr. Vervoort?
I agree as well.
Thank you. I'd like to ask the panel for their approval of consent applications of application number 5, B00317 and B00318. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Application number 5 is approved. Minor variance application D08-02-21 and D08-2-21. I'd like to ask the panel for approval of those minor variances. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Applications are approved. Thank you very much, Mr. Garvin.
Thanks for your time.
Welcome. So now we will skip number 7 and move on to number 8. Number 8 is 4926 Stonecrest Road. Ms. Zander, are you available? Good morning again.
Good morning. It's always a little lag there.
Yep. Are you able to take the oath for the signposting?
I am not, but my client, Mr. Dupuis, should be here and he's prepared to take the oath.
Okay. Don't see him as yet. I see he's there. Mr. Dupuis, are you there? I saw him. He was there. Good morning,
Sorry
Mr.
for that.
Dupuis. That's
Good morning.
okay. I need to administer a signposting for the property. Are you able to take that signposting oath now?
Yes.
You solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time. Do you swear?
I swear.
Thank you very much. Ms. Zander, will you be making the presentation on behalf of the owner?
Yes, I will.
Please proceed with a brief summary.
Thank you. Hoping the staff can just put up the severance sketch. Thank you. So the purpose of the applications today are to create 2 lots fronting to Stonecrest Road. You can see on that survey that's just come up, there were 2 previous severances. These were granted around 1980. So they predate the cutoff date, if you will, in the city's official plan, leaving this property eligible for additional lot creation. So the application is to create 2 new lots. One is approximately 5 acres in size at the north part of the property. Not sure staff have the actual severance sketch prepared by my office. Thank you. And the second application is to create approximately 2-acre lot as shown on the sketch in front of you. The applications, when filed, included a tree planting plan, a tree forestry plan that was applied to this property some years ago. And if you recall, this application came to the committee in the spring and staff asked for a more detailed environmental impact study prepared by a biologist. That was actually submitted to staff on May the 24th. So the city has had that report for some months. We just got comments on that on Friday. And we, as I indicated earlier, we did provide a revised environmental impact study from the project biologist back to staff on Monday morning. So staff have that to review. So we're asking the committee to proceed to consider this application. The property does fall in the rural zone in the city and city zoning bylaws. So the two lots at 2 acres and 5 acres do comply with the rural zone provisions, and the retained lot at 57 acres exceeds the minimum required for a retained parcel. Perhaps I'll leave it at that. Happy to answer questions should they arise. And of course, my client is here as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zander. Mr. Harrigan, can you make some, sorry, Mr. Gordon, on behalf of the city, can you make some comments?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, as was noted, there was no EIS prepared in advance of the April 7th hearing. Forest management plan was provided, and it's not sufficient for the city's requirements. So an EIS was requested. While it was submitted some time ago, our environmental planners are incredibly busy, and they review things within our 2-week time frame in advance of hearings. Both our environmental planners and I believe the Conservation Authority noted large enough deficiencies within the EIS that we would request the adjournment to address those issues in advance of the application being heard.
Okay. Now, Ms. Zander, are you aware of this, the 5 conditions that would be imposed should this application be approved? And do you agree with them?
Yes, we are. And I would note one of them speaks specifically to the environmental impact study to be addressed with staff. So yes, my client and I have reviewed the conditions and have no concerns.
Thank you. I'd like to ask our conservation partners if they've got any questions or comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Conservation Authority did review the May report and did note concerns with just some of the information provided, that a wetland was identified in the text of the report as bisecting the proposed Lot A, or would be Part 1. The Conservation Authority requested additional clarification on the location and the status of that wetland in relation to the proposed lot. We did receive the revised EIS on just Monday, but we have not had sufficient time to review it. So that's why we would not support approval of the applications today, given what we have reviewed to date. But we would like to have more time to review that report to just confirm where the wetland feature was identified, and a swale was discussed as well, potentially intersecting with the Lot 1 or Part A, depending on the text in the EIS or the sketch.
Thank you. Ms. Zander?
Yes, so thanks, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to note one of the main concerns raised was to show suitable building envelopes on each of the lots, a smaller building envelope on each of the lots. So that was included in the revised information, as well as a comment on the wetland that Ms. Ogden has referenced. So obviously I'm not a biologist, and I understand Ms. Ogden and her team haven't had a chance to review, but I feel we've submitted the information back, and the city and the Conservation Authority are protected with the condition that the committee can impose related to the EIS. Thank you.
Thank you. What do you feel about that, Ms. Ogden? Do you feel that the condition with a revised EIS, would that solve your problem of not being able to address it immediately?
I actually have not reviewed the conditions proposed for the application, but our concern is with potentially lot creation within a wetland. I'm not sure that's what's being proposed in this case. We just haven't had an opportunity and sufficient time to review the application and the information submitted.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Chandler, I'd like to ask for your comments, please.
I don't really have a problem with the condition that requires that the EIS be revised to the satisfaction of the city and the CA, as long as I understand the nature of those revisions. Is there a concern that there isn't a development envelope on one of these proposed lots?
Mr. Gordon.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would say that that is a possibility, just because we haven't verified it yet, but I don't know that there's any, I would just say that's always a possibility where it hasn't been verified in advance of the consent, but I don't know that there's specific features on this site that lead to an increased risk. I don't know if the Conservation Authority would have more details on that potential.
Ms. Ogden, can you comment?
Thank you. So through you, Mr. Chair, the description of the text of the initial report described that there was a wetland feature impacting Lot A or Part 1. So without having reviewed the revised report, I'm unaware where that impacts that proposed lot and whether that does impact a building envelope. So we would need to review the revised report in order to determine whether there is potentially an impact on the building envelope. With that said, even if there are portions of the property that are identified as wetland and have been evaluated as such, we wouldn't support that lot creation into the wetland feature, which could potentially, depending again where it's located in relation to the lot, require a revision to the proposed lot boundary.
Ms. Chandler?
So this becomes a risk for the applicant of not being able to satisfy the Conservation Authority or city staff that there is a developable envelope on one of those lots. Are you sure you really want to proceed? Sometimes the revisions to EISs are just tweaks, language, content, showing certain things, but if this is a concern about development envelopes on your actual proposed parcels, that could make it impossible to satisfy a condition. You would lose the severance. I totally sympathize with the period of time that was available for the review and that it didn't get done, which might have given you more time to revise the EIS and have it reviewed to their satisfaction. So for that reason, I'm leaning a little bit towards going with the condition, but I think you ought to think very seriously about whether you want to proceed, because you could lose a severance over this, especially severance A.
Thank you, Ms. Chandler. Mr. Otto, any comments?
No, I'm fine with it the way it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis?
No use in me saying everything Ms. Chandler said over again, but I agree with her thoughts on this one.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Mr. Vervoort?
Well, I think ultimately it's up to the applicant if they want to take the chance, if there are some outstanding issues. I think the proposed conditions cover off any concerns that may be raised once the EIS is fully reviewed and completed. And if the consent can't be granted, then the applicant would have to come back and refile with a different lot configuration, file a new application. So in this circumstance, I think the proposed conditions cover off those concerns. And I'm a bit less concerned maybe than a couple of the other members, just given the amount of residential development that's already around the existing proposed lots near the road. So I'd be in favor of approving the application with those conditions to address any deficiencies in the EIS and with appropriate development agreements.
Thank you very much. Now I'd like to ask the panel for approval of this application with all 5 conditions. All those in favor, please raise your hands.
I'm still, just a question. The applicant still wants to proceed with what we've talked about, the possibility of the lot not going ahead. You're still comfortable with that?
Ms. Zander?
So thank you, Mr. Chair. My comment would be that the project team and the project biologist, I feel we have submitted a plan that shows suitable building envelopes at 0.2 hectares on each of the lots. Of course, I don't know for sure that the staff are going to be agreeable to that. So ultimately, it's up to Mr. Dupuy as the applicant. I think I heard, I can't remember when the planners say, an adjournment to the next hearing would probably give staff enough time to review. So I need to defer to Mr. Dupuy if he wants to accept the decision. or adjourn for 2 weeks and allow staff time to come back. Thank you.
Mr. Dupree, last word to you.
I'm not exactly sure of where that's going. I did spoke with the biologist regarding the floodplain. The floodplain is really seasonal. I did send some photo. She did review after, so I'm not overly concerned about the floodplain. The water is really seasonal. So again, it's I'm not exactly sure. What's my risk in there? It's maybe we should see Ms. Chandler is raising her
Ms.
hand.
Chandler will be able to help with that.
Okay.
Ms. Chandler, you're muted.
I can explain, or maybe Ms. Sander would prefer to explain to her client sort of what.
It probably would be better that Ms. Sander did it. Ms. Chandler?
So thank you, Mr. Chair. So if the committee approves as submitted and we cannot satisfy staff that there's suitable building envelope on each of the lots, then as Ms. Chandler said, one or potentially both of the severances fall apart and you have to reapply. So there is a little bit of risk. I think the information we have provided demonstrates suitable building areas, but I'm going to say the safe choice is to adjourn for 2 weeks and let staff have the time to review and come back and be really sure that they are satisfied. We've put information in front of them that they can support, they being staff can support. So I would suggest that would be safer than the committee making a decision and you risk not being able to demonstrate suitable building area on each lot.
So, Mr. Dupree, would you like to move forward or adjourn this application?
Let's move forward. I'm confident that the condition will be met. So
very well. Thank you very much. I'd like to ask the panel now for approval of this application with all 5 conditions. All in favor, please raise your hands. Your application is approved, Mr. Dupree and Ms. Zander. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we're going to excuse Ms. Chandler. Thank you very much for your help today, Ms. Chandler. Have a great week. Now we're going to move on to application number 7. Application number 7 has to do with 3125 Torwood Drive, and Ms. Zander is available again. I see her.
Yes.
Ms. Zander, are you able to take the sign posting oaths?
I am not Mr. Chair, but my client should be on the call or joining shortly to take the oath for the signage.
Mr. or Mrs. Nixon, are you available? I see Valerie Nixon. She's just muted at the present time. Ms. Nixon, are you available?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. I need to administer an oath concerning the sign posting on your property. Can you take that oath today?
Yes, I can.
You solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time. Do you swear?
Yes, I swear.
Thank you very much. Ms. Zander, please proceed with a brief summary of your application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The purpose of the applications is to create 2 new lots that would front to Torwood Drive, and the retained lot would contain the existing home owned and occupied by my clients. Severance 1 is about 4.6 acres in size. Severance 2 is about 6.8 acres in size. And the retained lot, as I said, would continue to house existing dwelling. You'll see on the sketch that's on the screen, proposed Severance 1 has a barn structure on it labeled to be decommissioned. I would note and appreciate the wording of the condition from staff to give my clients the flexibility to either remove the barn or seek a zoning amendment to retain it. I think their intent, excuse me, is to remove it, but appreciate the wording on the condition. It gives them a little bit of time to resolve that. So that condition is satisfactory. We did the minimum distance separation calculations for a number of barns surrounding the property. The ones that were closest you see in the figure that do not affect the severed lots. And we have received a number of comments from the neighbors regarding water quality and quantity in this area. Certainly respect those comments, and the city staff have recommended the standard condition regarding a hydrogeology study, which has to be completed to demonstrate suitable drinking water quality and quantity for both severed lots. So I believe that condition, assuming the hydrogeology study can provide positive conclusions, would satisfy the neighbors' concerns with regard to potable water. I'm happy to answer questions if there are other things you'd like me to address. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Zander, you touched on 2 of the 6 conditions. Are you aware of the other 4, and are you in agreement with the other 4?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we've reviewed the conditions and have no concerns. Thank you.
Now I'd like to move on to Mr. Gordon. Mr. Gordon, can you make some comments on behalf of the city?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, the planning department has no concerns with the application subject to the conditions contained within the report.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask the conservation partners if they have any comments to make with respect to this application.
Conservation Authority notes that there is a water course along the rear of the proposed severed lots, but there is a sufficient building envelope located greater than 30 meters on each of the proposed lots, and we therefore have no concerns with the applications.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask panel for their comments. Mr. Vervoort.
No comments, questions, or concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Otto.
No comments, questions, or concerns. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis.
I support the application. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask the panel for approval of this application. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Your application is approved, Ms. Zander. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Move on to our final application of the day, application number 9. Having to do with 6150 Thunder Road. Ms. Lippman, are you available? I see you there, Ms. Lippman.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. I'd like to administer the signposting for the property oath. Are you available to take that oath?
Yes, I am.
You solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing, as instructed, and was clearly visible and legible during that time. Do you swear?
I do.
Please proceed with a summary of your application today.
Okay. So the applications before the committee are for consent to create 1 new lot, as well as reciprocal easements for drainage and maintenance of an existing ditch. I have provided this presentation, but I don't know that we really need to go into it too much, other than to take a look at the images on slides 3 and 4, which I guess would be the next slide. So here we can see the subject property in green. It is designated general rural area in the city's official plan and zoned RU, rural countryside in the zoning bylaw. And you can see in the air photo that there are natural features and significant woodlands, unevaluated wetlands on the parcel, which was the reason for the previous adjournment from the August 28th hearing. I would like to thank the city for working with the applicant to come to mutually agreeable language of a condition. The condition was aided for the environmental impact statement. The condition was aided through the identification of a 2-hectare building envelope on that green finger that heads up towards Boundary Road, which is quite far removed from the features of interest. Perhaps we'll go to the next slide just to look at the parts on the reference plan. And so the parcel in red is the severed parcel. You can see that that is part 1, and then part 2 and 3 are identified as the easements over the existing ditch or stream. The property in the blue along Boundary Road is owned by the applicant, but is a separate parcel, so is not part of the application before you today. So as you can see in the city's report, they no longer have any concerns with the severance applications. They have identified 7 or 8 conditions, all of which are acceptable to the applicant, as are the conditions of the South Nation conservation. So subject to any questions, that's my presentation.
Thank you very much. Now I'd like to ask Mr. Harrigan to present some comments on behalf of the city.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, the planning department has no concerns with this application, subject to the conditions contained within our report.
Thank you very much. Do the conservation partners have any comments to make?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We don't have concerns with the application. We have requested several conditions as well. There are technical studies that have been submitted and we're reviewing as part of the larger property. And the OSSO has asked that the septic system for the property with the existing residents be clarified to ensure that it complies with the building code. But granted those conditions can be satisfied, we don't have a concern with the application.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask the panel for comments with respect to this application. Mr. Lewis.
No concerns.
Thank you. Mr. Vervoort.
No concerns or questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Otto.
No, I'm in support of it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to ask the panel for approval of this application with all 8 conditions. All in favor, please raise your hands. Your applications are approved. Thank you very much, Ms. Libben.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you all for your help today. Look forward to seeing you next time, October the 6th. Bye for now. Thank you.